Welcome to the Daphne Child Grantee Spotlight Series, where we showcase the innovative work of our grantees in combating violence against children. The Daphne Child Programme is a collaborative initiative funded by the European Union, led by Eurochild and Terre des Hommes, empowering grassroots civil society organizations across 9 European countries through a comprehensive 3-year sub-granting and capacity building program. You can learn more at daphne.childhub.org. That's daphne.childhub.org.
My name is Zsofia Karetka, and today I'm speaking with Yulia Sachenko, Executive Director of Child Rescue in Ukraine, about their project focused on comprehensive legal and advocacy support for child survivors of sexual exploitation and abuse. Yulia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting and thank you for having me today. And also thank you for paying attention to the needs of the children in Ukraine that are in a very difficult circumstances, as we all know.
Yes, can you tell us a bit first about yourself and the organizations, and then indeed about these children that you are working with and what their needs are?
Child Rescue is an organization existing in Ukraine for already 20 years. And in different periods of time, the organization's focus was slightly different, but always on children's needs. And in last about 7 years, we are extremely focused on supporting children survivors of sexual abuse and exploitation in Ukraine. We have 3 main directions of our work, which is prevention, protection, and prosecution. And we have a very dedicated team who are very passionate about well-being of children and making this life and society and the world safer for them.
So this project that you are participating in, the Daphne Child Initiative, is called Comprehensive Legal and Advocacy Support for Survivors of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. And you have some very specific and ambitious goals related to this. You will support 30 child survivors with direct legal representation, and you are aiming for favorable verdicts in at least 11 out of 12 criminal cases. Is that right? And can you walk us through what makes this approach unique?
Yes, sure. So just before I dig into these ambitious goals and numbers, I will briefly outline what we are doing for the children exactly and why we are aiming this and what we are doing to achieve it. So first of all, as I said, we are doing everything possible to prevent human trafficking and child exploitation and sexual abuse against children. So we are developing all sorts of materials for educators, for children themselves, for frontline professionals, trainings and all that. And you can find some of the materials on our website, childrescue.com.ua. The next, protection and prosecution, we are working basically with children survivors directly. And during last 2.5 years, we have supported 113 survivors in our program, and it's a lot. And we are taking the most vulnerable, those survivors who would not get help from any other sources. So sometimes these families are in desperate situations, and that's why we are compelled to do everything possible for them. We operate a small little shelter for the children who are either orphans or whose parents or family members are perpetrators. And it's just a small shelter for 10 children for now. And in prosecution, we do have the team of lawyers and attorneys who represent the rights of children and guide them through legal proceedings and help minimize traumatization for these children in the process. So again, in the last 2.5 years, we have won 8 court cases already. And these wins were basically real sentences for the perpetrators. One of the sentence was the lifetime prison for the perpetrator. The rest of the sentences were from 8 years of imprisonment to 18 years of imprisonment. And always we have won the compensation for the survivors' families in the amount of about 5 or 6 or even 16,000 USD. Right now in our caseload, we have 52 cases, and these all are the children survivors of sexual abuse and exploitation, and 30 of them are the court cases. So we have 30 court cases active right now, and we really hope that at least 5 of them will be won by the end of this year.
I have a question about, because you specifically focus on children in the occupied territories and those returned from Russian deportation, as far as I understand. Can you just explain our listeners to what this actually means, and what are the unique vulnerabilities that these children face that other survivors might not face?
Yes, so in child rescue, we are working both with those children who were returned from Russian occupied territories and with those who have suffered from sexual violence or exploitation on the territory of Ukraine. For us, it doesn't really matter where the situation occurred. For us, the well-being of the child is the center of our work. But we are very actively working with Save Ukraine. Save Ukraine is an NGO that is focused on returning Ukrainian children from Russia and occupied territories. And for now, it's a very dangerous and very hard job because there are no legal connections between two countries that are in the war. And so basically every return is huge victory, and it's a very thorough and hard process. But very often children who are coming from occupied territories or Russian Federation, they have very deep psychological and physical wounds. Many of them have been exposed to forced indoctrination, militarization, separation from families, identity erasure, and many other forms, even exploitation, and also conflict-related sexual violence. So we obviously are talking about hard and heavy traumatization of these children. So we need to focus and work really hard with these children. So once the Save Ukraine is returning these children, we are doing screenings, and as we identify children survivors of sexual abuse or exploitation, we are taking them into our care and our programs and provide them with a holistic support. So basically, if they need accommodation, we are providing accommodation and the holistic support, which includes food, medical assessment and treatment, clothing, education, leisure, and many other aspects. But the main focus is obviously psychological rehabilitation of these children from the trauma they have experienced. And of course, legal support as well, because these children, upon return, they may lack documents. They have lost all the documents, and the family doesn't have the documents, so they need support in the document restoration. They face social stigma. They struggle with reintegration due to long-term trauma. Some of the children are unaccompanied or have lost both of the parents and need legal guardians, which place them in a very risky situation regarding re-traumatization and exploitation. So all this is in the focus of our team, and we are trying to provide them with the best care we can.
Your project also includes facilitating forensic examinations.
Yes.
It must be an incredibly sensitive process. You mentioned using techniques to avoid re-traumatizing these children. Can you talk a bit about that? How do you maintain the child's dignity while gathering evidence needed for the successful prosecutions?
We will talk a little bit about our trauma-informed approach, and we just need also probably I would love to highlight for the broader audience that will listen to us that the war is always the best background for crimes against humanity, including the exploitation. And primarily, this hits those who are the most vulnerable, so the children. And we need to keep this in mind. And obviously, the war has exacerbated all the vulnerabilities and enabled new forms of exploitation. Very often it's, again, I already told the displacement, the family separation, poverty, all of that, but also the digital dimension. So during displacement, all these circumstances, children often are left one-to-one with their devices, with their phones, and they are exposed to recruitment into the and grooming into the sexual exploitation. So, and we have quite a number of these cases. So basically, just again a little bit about the statistics that we have. In the 2024, so the last year, out of 100 cases of sexual abuse, proven sexual abuse, we have 15% of sexual exploitation. In 40% of the cases, the abuser was someone from the family, so a relative. 20% of the cases, the abuser was a stranger. And 36% of the cases, the abuser was someone in the circle of the child. And very often this happens towards not only girls, but towards the boys as well. Just to summarize, we have 20% of cases where survivors are boys.
Mhm.
And we need to keep that in mind because, we have a lot of myths around the subject of sexual exploitation, including children, but
Yeah.
the boys are also very much exposed to that.
Yeah.
And returning to the trauma-informed approach, how do we ensure it? First of all, in our work, we work to help implement child-friendly procedures, such as child-friendly interview rooms designed in a non-threatening way, and engage in trained psychologists, child psychologists during the testimony and interviewing. And also we are trying to ensure the limiting the numbers of interview to avoid additional traumatization. When possible, we are coordinating the multidisciplinary approach. And I need to say that we are cooperating with local authorities very much. So we work with the Prosecutor General Office, with State Child Protection System, with the police, and they know of our, achievements, and they refer cases to us. So they trust us and they refer cases, and this is what gives us the opportunity to cooperate, to insist, to offer some techniques, do some suggestions, and make sure that the child would be in the center of the process, so the child-centered approach. In the future, we are planning to launch a Panda Center. So we call it Panda to make it child friendly, but also Panda stands for protection and advocacy. So P and A, that's why Panda.
Okay, great name.
Yeah, that's our creative approach to namings. So, and yeah, the center will be launched very soon, hopefully in a couple of months. And we are working actively towards the launch of this center and engaging partnership support for this center. And welcome to all of the partners who might listen to us. We welcome you to join us in this fight and create the best environment for the children. So the center will be located very close to Kyiv and will serve to the all Kyiv region. And but also not only Kyiv region, but also other areas and regions of Ukraine where there are no such centers. And basically the idea of the center, it has two components, protection and advocacy. So protection will stand for the shelter, and here we will relocate our small shelter for 10 children to this place, and here we'll be able to welcome up to 30 children. And the program is from 3 to 6 months, when we hope to provide recovery and support for the children from their trauma. And the second part of the center, the advocacy part, is basically will be working based on the Barnahus model, which is very familiar in Europe and widespread in Europe. And some of the Barnahuses start to be launched in Ukraine as well, but there is no Barnahus in the Kyiv region. So that's why we are trying to provide these services to Kyiv region and other regions of Ukraine that don't have the Barnahuses yet. And already at this moment, we have cases from different regions of Ukraine, including Kherson region, Mykolaiv region, Zaporizhia, Zhytomyr, other regions all around Ukraine. And basically, the idea of this center is to ensure the multidisciplinary approach and child-friendly approach to interviewing the child during the criminal proceeding. And we have already negotiated the cooperation with Forensic Medical Examination Office, and they are happy to work in our premises to ensure that the child would come to the center once, will give the testimony, will be interviewed, will go through the forensic medical examination in the same place, and then go to the psychologist who will stabilize the child and will give a little toy of panda to encourage the child and thank the child for the bravery. And then the child is going and leaving the center to the restoration program that he will undergo with a psychologist. And then the team, the multidisciplinary team, including child protection officer, the prosecutor, the police officer, or the investigator, and the rest of the people in the multidisciplinary team will be present during the interview, but in the different room, will see the whole process through the screens, will not interact with the child, but still have access through the microphones to the forensic interviewer, will collect all the evidence in one interviewing process, and then we'll have the forensic medical examination results, and basically we'll have everything to ensure the good result for the criminal proceedings and court hearing, and there will be no need to re-interview the child again and again, and also no need to invite the child to the courtroom where the child could see the perpetrator and be highly traumatized again, and the entire process of restoration, psychological restoration, will be interrupted again. And our lawyers, they play multiple roles in this process, starting with legal representation, and then they are as advocates and protectors, working alongside with the psychologist in case management and create the safety around the child. And also the psychologist, they play a vital role in this process as well, as they are mentally preparing the child to be interviewed, so that the child would be ready, that the interview will happen, and will be ready to disclose the most vulnerable details. And also the psychologists are often providing the psychological assessment and conclusion for the courts, for the judges, that also play a vital role in achieving the justice for the children.
That's great. You also mentioned educating children about sexual exploitation so they can return to their communities as advocates. And this seems like a really powerful approach to prevention. So how do you balance empowering children with this knowledge while ensuring that they don't carry an inappropriate burden on themselves?
Yeah, that is hard, because we understand that not in every case we can do that, and we don't want to push and make the child do something that they don't want to do, but only see when they are willing. Very interesting that a year ago when we had this case, very difficult case, when the perpetrator was sentenced to the lifetime imprisonment, the child was so grateful, and she said after everything has finished, she said that she wants to be a lawyer. She wants to protect other
Wow.
children because she saw how much effort the lawyer has done for her to protect her, to ensure she's okay, to make sure everything and the court hearing happen. And so she appreciated it so much. And yeah, this is something precious, you know. And even in our shelter, we have children who are there for quite a long time already, and we want them to be, we want to arrange some professional orientation for them as well. So we are taking them to excursions to different places and facilities, to the bank or to the TV company or to the news organization, and just to connect them and make them see what kind of profession they can obtain later. And many of them are really appreciating what we are doing for them, and they see this as an opportunity for them in future. I had the case when I was supporting a young girl, and she just turned 18, and she was in a very difficult situation. She was basically in the situation of sexual exploitation, and we had to relocate her out of Ukraine, and we found partners who provided the shelter, and also as she turned 18, they have offered her an education. And she chose to be a social worker to help other children. And now she is doing her work in the sphere of fighting human trafficking, which is amazing. And
Yes.
you know, this is a great example of that something that we are doing on the local level has a ripple effect, you know, and
Yes.
impact many others. But in terms of prevention, we are inventing different ways to engage children into prevention. We have cartoons, and we have developed programs for school children, different age groups. So we have 3 different programs. Each program has 4 lessons with cartoons and very interesting materials and something that they are doing with their hands, so that to ensure that they will keep something in their memory, will memorize and remember this through some time. And people and teachers and the children, they are very enthusiastic about it. And as the next step, we are planning to involve peer-to-peer communication, so that they would, you know, share their knowledge and thoughts. But in this process, I would be very cautious to involve the actual children survivors. Even if there is enough time after the recovery from trauma, I would be really cautious, because this may cause additional traumatization or flashback, or something that would remind them of the previous experience and would hurt them even more. So yeah, we are trying to protect our survivors, and maybe in some years they would make a decision to be a lawyer or a social worker, as the previous cases, and they would be strong enough to share their own experience, because I know that this is probably the most impactful ways to impact and engage other people, when a survivor is sharing his or her personal story. I know many survivors of human trafficking across Europe and the world who are brave enough to share their testimony, their personal story. But I know that they came to this point not at once. It took them years to recover from trauma and to develop this inner strength to be able to talk freely.
Thank you so much. Wrapping up, I would like to ask you to share some advice for organizations that also work with child survivors or work in conflict settings. And this could be from a very personal perspective. What is your most valuable insight to share with them, or any advice?
That's a very personal and quite a hard question. But, talking about Ukraine, we understand, and I assume that it applies to every area, every country that is at war, because when the country is at war, all the children in the country are highly traumatized. I have my own children. I'm a mother, and my children have never been in the conflict zone or anywhere close, but still they experience shelling. They experience the air raids, sirens, and that all interrupts their schooling process, their sleep, and all the day after that. So all the children in the country, I'm talking about Ukraine, all the children are traumatized here. And obviously, the war is always the perfect background for those perpetrators, for those people who are planning to or making their plots to exploit and abuse children. So in this conflict related settings, we need to be aware of the risks and vulnerabilities of children, because they are the first to suffer from the atrocities, from the crimes against humanity. And we need to exceed and raise the bar, and we need to provide a higher level of protection to our children, both to our personal children and to the children in our sphere of influence, in our city, and also advocate for the safety and protection measures for the children on the national level. So this is one of the most critical aspects, I would say.
So true. Is there anything you may have learned from children yourself about resilience?
Yeah. Yeah, children are amazing, and sometimes we need to learn from them. Every time I come to the shelter that we run and I see the children around me with their smiley, shiny faces, I always see them as the pure and the best and most joyful children in the world. And I often forget about those atrocities and everything that they have gone through. And obviously, this all happened to them undeserved, and they didn't deserve everything that had happened. But still, the ability of the children to be open and to smile, and to the desire to live and the desire to develop is amazing. And it not always happen by default, and the trauma may stay really deep in the heart of the child. So if we are attached to the work like this, we can do something from our side to help them believe in future, to help them trust good people, to help them recognize the opportunity in their life. And if the safe adult will be close to them, will be supporting, will provide a supporting shoulder, the chances of the child to restore and to come back to the normal and joyful life are much higher. So this is something that I really love about this job.
Yes, so true. And thank you so much for doing this amazingly important work that you're doing. Yulia Sachenko from Child Rescue, thank you for sharing your insights and for the remarkable work that you're doing to ensure that child survivors of sexual exploitation and abuse in Ukraine receive both justice and healing. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Daphne Child Grantee Spotlight series. You can find more information about the Daphne Initiative and our work to combat violence against children at our website. Until next time, I'm Zsófia Karetka, and I would like to thank Yulia again for joining us today from Child Rescue in Ukraine. Yulia, thank you so much.
Thank you.